welcome to Askimo TV. We're talking to Guido Rauch today, who is a wealth manager residing in the UK. In today's interview, we will address the implications of the shifting economy on wealth management. Hi Guido, thank you for joining us today.
It's a pleasure, thank you.
Guido, a common practice of wealth management is to spread the client's money over different methods of saving and investment. But is it an option to spread money over different countries as well? And if so, what are the implications of that?
Well, it is essential to spread it over different countries, because the way you really should approach matters is you look at companies or sectors or industries which you think are going to do well this year. For example, if you are in the UK and you wanted to invest in the car industry because you felt that the car industry was doing very well next year, potentially, well, you couldn't buy any UK shares because there's no UK car industry left. So you would have to buy Germany, or you would have to buy Japan or the US. So there's no way escaping investing in other countries. In addition, the major growth engines for economists these days are the emerging markets. Be it China, be it Brazil, be it India, be it Russia, whatever it is. So therefore you have no chance anymore these days just to stay within your own country and invest in your own industry. That doesn't really work. The implications for that, of course, are that you now have an additional risks, because you're investing in not just in a foreign country, but in a foreign market which you don't know so well perhaps, although wealth managers should know their markets, but you invest in a foreign currency. So you have an additional currency risks, which traditionally you should also try to cover, or at least be aware of that risk.
Okay. Have the recent shifts in the economic climate influenced your decisions as to where to invest?
Well, as I said, the main way I approach investment is by looking at companies and by looking at industries. So therefore, I will say, for example, last year, technology in the US was a very big sector, let's say Apple or Google, companies like that. So you look at companies and see where they do. Because companies today are global. They no more restricted their own home market. So it's not so much an issue of various economies doing one thing or the other, because everything is so interlinked. You have to concentrate on what the individual companies are doing. And therefore, that is the key to everything. And you can no longer exclude investing in a company which is global, because that's the way where the money is made. So my investment decisions are always based on how companies are performing. Now, it is also true that given the recent troubles in Europe, for example, I would never look at a Greek company at this very moment, simply because it's too risky. Even if that particular Greek company might be a very well diversified industrial international company, it just will be too risky. The trade-off between risk and reward is too high. You can't quite exclude a company from its own background, from its own economic environment, but you have to look at companies from a global perspective.
Okay. And nowadays in the globalized economy that we live in, has it become easier or harder for you to invest in foreign countries, and has it become more or less worthwhile?
Well, the interesting thing really is, for example, everybody talks about China. China is the big market. If you had been investing in Chinese companies in China, the chances you would have done very badly. However, if you had invested in European companies or American companies who have exported to China, the chances are you would have done very well. So in a sense, it is easier to invest globally. I could invest in China, but it would be the wrong thinking just because China as an economy is potentially doing very well, that their companies are doing very well. So you have to kind of look at it from a different point of view. You have to look at the companies which are talked about. How global are they? Where are they really exporting? You shouldn't really these days invest in a company which is so domestic and so local, hasn't got an international reach. But you shouldn't necessarily believe just because, as I said, China is doing very well, that you have to invest in Chinese companies. That's the wrong approach to things.
Okay. In your experience, have you found that there are certain times of the year when investments seem to work better than other times? And if so, do you have a reason why?
Well, things have changed dramatically. It used to be that you had quiet periods where things weren't really happening, but it's all gone. At the moment, you can no longer rely on periods which are more interesting or less interesting. I mean, there are all kind of theories that if you invest at the beginning of the month, you'll do better than invest at the end of the month, but ultimately, that doesn't make a difference because you have to take a long-term view, and from a long-term view, you have to believe in the companies you invest in. And that holds true whether it's, January or whether it's the middle of the summer. So the key really is to do your research on which companies you want to invest in and then go through with it whatever time it is.
Okay. And finally, would you say that a wealth manager is more or less valuable than a bank in times of economic instability?
Well, the functions which the wealth manager has and banks have are very, very different. Banks really are the machines that oil industry, which is not the role which we as wealth manager play. So when the financial sector, the banks, when they do badly, then everything suffers. I mean, the biggest crisis we had in the world economy is because the financial sector was in such turmoil. When you have big banks going bankrupt or big banks being in real difficulties, that affects everyone. If a wealth manager is doing well or not so well, that is really ultimately quite irrelevant. It makes certain clients perhaps unhappy, but the economies on the whole will continue to function. But if banks start to disintegrate, then we're all in big trouble.
Right. Well, that's fair enough. Thank you so much, Guido, for talking to us today here at Askimo TV.
It's a pleasure, as usual.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.